als we ze op moeten sturen, dan komt dat 8 gulden bij. Want het is heel duur om het even te sturen. We vragen zo'n 49 gulden. Ik heb in mijn hele leven nu 2 tapes van Deepak Chopra en 1 tape van Maha Anand verkocht. Dus om je dus een idee te geven in 6 maanden tijd, dat was het. Zo'n grote business is het niet. Nee. Maar jullie kunnen een master krijgen. Dat wil zeggen, je krijgt een kopie van het uitgesneden deel. En als je een master wil hebben, die tapes zijn wat duurder, die zijn misschien 25 gulden. Dan maak ik een SVS master voor je. Dat wil zeggen, die kun je naar een dupliceerbedrijf doen en dat moet je maar doen. Dat moet je maar doen. Of jij dat doet, dat mag jij voor je eigen organisatie.
Ja, daar hoef je jou niet meer lastig
van. Hoef je meer lastig van. Maar als ik op een gegeven moment merk van Jesus Christ.
Ze gaan er 1000.
Er zijn er 1000 verkocht. Okay. Een tweede is dat ik dit programma beschikbaar stel aan de wereld. Ja. Dat wil zeggen, als er lokale omroepen zijn, dan krijgen ze dat.
Dat past het erin dat we een regeling maken naar 2 partijen toe. Zolang er in een sfeer is van kosten plus een kleine plus, zijn er voor beide partijen volkomen
en wat fair use heet is, als het promotie is voor jullie. Ja. Aan de andere kant zeg ik toe dat ik geen personality verkrachting doe. Dat ik ga niet stukjes eruit halen en zeggen, kijk eens, hindoes zijn gek en daar hebben we een voorbeeld ervan. Ja. Dus ik verkracht het materiaal niet. Dat heet, dat doe ik niet. Als er grote deals komen van BBC van ik zeg van, goh, van waanzinnig materiaal, prima, dan vind ik dat de Maha Laksmi Stichting mag delen. En voor de rest maak ik het beschikbaar voor de wereld. Als mensen, maar dat geldt voor jullie ook. Je kunt mij bellen en zeggen, Luc, Maha Laksmi treedt op in Italië. Kun jij een broadcast tape naar die mensen sturen? Ja?
Oké, dat is duidelijk.
Zodat je dus materiaal hebt.
Uitstekend.
Oké, dus we krijgen geen ruzie op. Prima.
Even, ik ben totaal onbekend, hè?
Nou, laat ik je het voorbeeld geven. Yes. Yes. Who are we? Are we ourselves? Are we an eternal soul in a package that might change? Many people have an experience, like out-of-body experiences, where they start to see that maybe there is an eternal soul and a packaging. One of the forms in which people can experience that separation is what the Hawaiians call a walk-in. A walk-in is when someone during their life suddenly experiences that something has happened. In fact, it goes even beyond. It feels as if in the old body a whole new person resides. Maha Laksmi lived in Hawaii and in her new personality, which is called Maha Laksmi, took over the body of a Hawaiian woman. We talk with her about opening your heart and walk your talk. Welcome, Maha Laksmi.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
To start with, a simple question is, what does Maha Laksmi mean?
Well, Maha Laksmi is the goddess of good fortune, and standing for the royal road of good fortune, success, happiness, eternal joy, freedom. And that is probably the most important thing, is also freedom.
Now, freedom of the body is something you have achieved in a certain way, because you have a new personality in a body that existed. You must feel free.
Well, yes, I do. Except the thing is that I entered this body and I had responsibilities that I took over the journey of someone else. There are different types of walk-ins. That's what we must get clear here. There are walk-ins, and those are personality changes, and then there are actually soul shifts. Mine was a soul shift. So when I walked into this body, it was like a body, my body was like an infant's body, and I had to integrate myself as a child in the body. So it's not the same as a new personality in this body. It's actually a new soul in this body. So it's the integration of the one before me, because when you take over someone else's journey, God is the only one that can approve that, and then you must take on their journey. Plus I have my own journey as Maha Laksmi.
When did this happen?
I walked in on January 22nd, 1996 in Hawaii, at the Grand Wailea Hotel in Hawaii, in the mud bath. and I spoke my name. I don't know, it must have been around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I said, I am Empress Wailea. And the reason why I was able to speak my name so clearly is the one before me was an accomplished woman who was a teacher, and she had actually understood how to unlock the nadis, meaning the karmic history in the body, by doing several types of healing processes over a period of 10 years because she knew that there was freedom available. However, when she began to access the core wound, which is the actual a duplication of the karma from many lifetimes that's unresolved in the hereditary patterning, when she had to face the fact that her mother was her main abuser, she couldn't handle it and prayed to God to be released. How I became aware of it is, as I integrated deeper into the body over the 5th and 6th months, I actually heard her prayer to be released, and it was answered.
Now there are similar processes, but not as complete, where people have channel experiences.
Yes.
They experience some entity talking or acting through them.
That's true. That's different. This is actually, I am the soul, Maha Laksmi. It's different than someone giving their body over to someone and channeling their information from another soul.
Now, this happened in Hawaii. Is Hawaii a good place for walk-ins? Is that something that lives in the Huna tradition? This woman that you were before prepared for it in a way. As you say, she opened herself up.
Yes, she prayed to be released from her duty. She knew that she had accomplished a lot, and she knew that she was no longer happy, did not want to go on, but knew that her journey was important. So she prayed to God that she could be released. And so, because the body, it actually being free, also had a matrix of intelligence that was genius, matrix of understanding of all the study that she had done that would have been wasted. And so, it was quite a wonderful, valiant service for her to ask to be relieved rather than not being able to carry on at the level that she was going to carry on. So I have the privilege of walking into this body. Now, in Hawaii, especially in Maui, there is an active power center, so to speak. It is a place where soul interchange can happen.
It's one of the power spots in the world, but maybe people would say Jerusalem is, or in England there are many places where Stonehenge and other places where things happen, and yet I haven't heard of walk-ins before.
Yes.
So before, it's in Amsterdam, there was someone, Melchizedek or whatever, a similar situation, but it's not in our view. It's, as a Dutch person would say, it's not in the Bible, is it?
Well, I will quite honestly tell you, I don't know if it's in the Bible. The one before me did not read the Bible. She came about, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. She came about her understanding through her practical experience and doing it through healing processes. But what I understand, every time I speak, many times when I speak, especially when I was in Hawaii, I'd have the Bible quoted back to me. So the understanding is there. But walk-in, there have been various understandings of walk-in when a personality actually goes through an elevation in consciousness. But now at the times that are at hand, with the rapid changes on the planet that are possible, there are many, many walk-ins that are occurring. Many are not advertised. My particular one needs to be advertised because Maha Laksmi is she has a particular following in the world. And so I volunteered for this journey. I wasn't really expected, but this was really a journey that couldn't be wasted. It was a woman that had accomplished a lot and also was going to make a great impact. Now, however, at this time, they're expecting many, many walk-ins. Because, of course, when a walk-in can walk in an adult body, if it's a strong enough, bold enough soul, time is not wasted. So there are many people out there that have accomplished a lot of healing and opened their vessel pretty much, but they don't have the direction or they don't have the intention to go any further. So these bodies are no longer wasted. Now, the Melchizedek energy that you mentioned, he and I are of the same energy, meaning we're the master of the 144 levels of energy. And so that's the reason why we're able to walk in.
We have to find out what that means, because are you referring to something out there that we normally won't know? Because I am not aware of 144 levels of energy. I mean, I can run and jump, and I sometimes feel a little bit more realized. But I have no personal knowledge of this thing out there.
Well, in the basic structure of the physical body, there are 7 chakras. Those are energy centers. There are many more, but the basic 7 chakras. And then there are also those that are, let's say, in the peripheral of the body that makes them 12. Then there are 12 chakras. And each chakra has 12 chambers, so to speak, is the way you would want to say it, or layers. And so that becomes 144 levels of energy.
And are you implying that normal people don't fully develop those 144?
Absolutely. One of the main problems is because people are, on the average, not emotionally developed. And that's because they're living from their head instead of their heart. The heart must be accessed to be able to access these levels of energy. And then in a particular way, the heart has to be accessed to be able to open all the energy levels.
Do you think that has to do with the times? That we particular in our mind, or is the technology that forces us to be there?
Well, yes, that's been the level of development thus far. However, humanity is starving for this now. They're ready for the change, and that's what the change is about. There will be people that will not go for the change, and they'll stay in their mind, and they'll live a particular life. There will be people that will go for the heart change and shift, which is also honoring the love of the feminine. And as honoring the love of the feminine brings back culture to the world, to the societies.
Sometimes I have a feeling we men are being pushed out, eh?
Oh, you know, Lou, it's really interesting that you say this. But when I speak about this, I'd like you to hear what I'm saying. The love of the feminine I'm talking about incorporates the love of the man. It is not the angry female that's become the goddess, angry goddess, and she's tougher than nails. I'm talking about the feminine woman who lives in her power that requires the love of a man to support her and nurture her to be able to be her fullest, the light of spirituality in the union.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we should look a little bit at the images, the statues that we have around, because I see that there is Radha and Krishna. Is that what you're trying to say, that there is a male and female unity that is necessary?
Yes, the male and female unity is necessary. It's actually the higher level of development. That means that as we really fully develop ourselves inside, the balance of the male-female, then our outside will reflect that. Now, there's pretty much been the war of the male and female going on the planet, and especially now the pendulum is swinging. Women are gaining their power, and especially going out into the world to be in the world and gain power the way men gained power. And that's really not the way women are to do it. That doesn't mean that they're not going to work. That doesn't mean they're not going to be productive. But they need to do it as women. And Radha and Krishna, yes, that is the symbol of the personality of the male-female balanced. There have been interpretations, the way I see it, that people think that that means that the male and female within one person becomes developed and then they're isolated, untouchable, independent. But what that really is housing is insecurity and self-hatred, because that kind of independence is really isolation and pain.
Now, that the notion of independence in America, many women think about, they want to be independent, financially independent. They want not to have to wait for men to marry them or pay for them. In Europe, there's a more, you would call it a settler society, where there is this dependence, this mutual dependence. Men and women should be together because they have a different role.
Yes. Well, first let's speak about America. You know, I have American voice, and people always tell me I was American, and of course I always felt Indian from the beginning. I was cooking Indian food, and so it's quite amusing to me because I don't know what American sounds like. However, in America, you know, when the Europeans look at America, it's a masculine country. So, for instance, if French, they give it a masculine article in front of it. And so it has a consciousness that's reflecting masculinity. So the women there are not valued at all. The men, and so women there are sort of angry. So the leaders, the ones that have found their power, have found it in response to being angry at the male. And so they're doing it like men. They realize a certain level of freedom, but not heart fulfillment. And that's part of the message that I'm speaking here, even in Holland, is that the healing has to come in the world, that money is wonderful. It's a tool, an energy, but it doesn't buy happiness. I'm not saying that you don't want to have whatever provides a tool that allows you to have, but God will provide that. If you find heart fulfillment, you'll be provided everything.
Now there's many teachers and many spiritual leaders that talk about the heart. I mean, it's been around for a while, and the notion that we should live from the heart comes there. But, well, we in the West, we kind of isolated that. We went to church on Sunday, felt the heart, and on Monday we went back to work and did our thing. I understand that one of your things is that I think comes nicely with the walk-in concept is walk your talk. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's more than Sunday spirituality. It's also more than spiritual groups becoming isolated and living their spirituality and not then every day being at war with everyone else on the planet. It's about integrating the male and female, the heart. The heart is actually the symbol of the feminine, okay? And so because pretty much in the cultures the symbol of God or the symbol that's been valued has been male. And so the mind has been valued more. And you hear many women that don't want to even be known for their beauty, they want to know for their brains. Well, when they do that, there's almost a denial of their own heart. So what we need to do is on a daily basis be interactive with our heart and mind. That means being able to hear, and hear God consciousness is the connection with the heart, past reactionary emotion, past the wounds. But when you can access the heart fully, you'll access God consciousness on earth at all times. And that brings divinity into humanity, and that raises the world's consciousness.
Maha Laksmi decided to enter a body in the latter part of the 20th century to bring this message. But how do you do that? Do you go around, touch people, heal them, be on television, or what's the method that you bring?
Well, when you say this, I have a smile on my face. You notice the first thing I thought about was my first 7 months in Hawaii and how I would wait for the next person to show up that was going to take me home and I could teach them. And I was learning because my body didn't have the memory or the understanding that you could trust. I was learning or opening the body to be able to trust that I'd always be provided for. So that was the smile.
Does that only go for Maha Laksmi, or does that go for everybody?
It's actually there for everyone, and that's part of opening the heart all the way. When you open the heart all the way and heal the wounds, meaning that if everyone in the Western world were able to show their wounds of their emotional underdevelopment, which is really the heart, we'd have everybody in wheelchairs as a symbol of their emotional inability to develop themselves. And so everybody in healing their heart at the level that I'm talking about can live in this balance of the male-female and have access to the divine at all times, and then master the physical plane, the material plane, and have infinite supply be available. And that's really what's possible. Now, how we do this now is we do seminars. I do private work with people. We also are intending on bringing together trainers now, because also the business world must be impacted. The world has become business. And that's one of the things that happened from America, as America is big business and big business is spreading. And by the way, one of the reasons why cancers are on the rise is because business is in the mind. And so when women enter the business world, then of course they're not honoring their heart. And when women are having excessive cancer, it means the culture's sick, not just the women. It means that there's an imbalance that needs to be healed.
Now, talking about this opening of the heart, I think when we were young, as a child, when we were born, our heart is open, but then the world comes in, not only by the people around us, but by technology, by radiation, by poison in the food, lots of things. Now you come here and you say, hey, we have to be open again. Well, that's nice, but it's a very dangerous thing, because if I would really be open, and this week we had in Amsterdam big riots, and I try to open myself up to those, the feeling of the people, and it's very frightening, their fear and the anger of the policemen, and well, it's a nice advice, but thank you, I have a very good defense system, and it helps me a lot. Why should I let go of that?
Well, I can relate to this, because when I came here to Holland, I made agreements to walk into the path of the one before me, and so I took on hereditary karma, walked into patterns, and thank God it only took me 9 months to birth myself free of them. But I understand, because I'm very, very sensitive. I'm like a newborn baby all the time. But that's what makes me so capable of the work that I do. However, What I see that's going to happen is those that choose to open their heart fully, which is really their house, their temple, what will happen is there will be two types of people, well, maybe more than two, living on the earth. Those that walk a dimension that's out of the realm of that suffering, that won't be interactive with that pain.
But in the process of opening up, what I see is that many people remember the suffering they had before their traumas and the fact that their mothers didn't care for them or they didn't understand how they cared for them. Jesus, those are painful processes. Those are, well, there's quite a few psychotherapists and psychiatrists in the world that take care of that. Try to help people cope with it. Why should we open the door, so to speak?
Right, and that's what I've just come through that whole process myself, so I understand that. Because if we want to end the cycle of death and dying, if in fact we want to realize God consciousness and freedom for the soul, that's the only way out. You can't ever end the cycle without that completion happening, the heart-to-heart opening, to be fulfilled. You could realize God without heart fulfillment. But if you realize God without heart fulfillment, then you won't ever really experience true joy.
True joy.
Yes, true joy.
I've always had relate for me happiness to joy to love.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, joy is fine. I mean, I can take a little pill, freely available at the streets in Amsterdam, or smoke some hash, and I feel this joy.
Yes, but see, well, first of all, when you take those little pills, that's sidestepping the journey that you're supposed to go through. So you'll just have to come back and do it over and over again until you take responsibility for your life. One thing that Maha Laksmi stands for is living in the seat of happiness. I am happy, and I go through many things. I've gone through many things since I've been here. However, I always end up in happiness again at a higher level. So it's possible. In fact, I know I've read a few things. I've picked up a few books just to show me that even there are many psychotherapists, many different types of therapy that say that happiness is not possible. I don't believe that. I believe that when you heal the core wound all the way and you come into balance in male-female, you will realize total happiness. Mm-hmm. And I experienced it when I walked in. My body was already in balance. I got to experience that. When I came to Holland, I went right into an industrialized culture, and after a healing process, I spent one day, 40 minutes, screaming of the pain that had taken to get into this consciousness where the feminine wasn't honored. And I mean honored at the level of the heart being open. So
you mean even in Holland we are too masculine, too organized, too much in the mind, too much technology?
Well, yes, even in Holland. Technology, I mean, I can't even be in the same room with a computer. In fact, I was
Is that radiation, or is it the data that it contains?
Well, radiation is one of the things. All of these, let's say, instruments of the 90s, all these instruments of the 90s do carry radiation, and they are the antithesis of being in your heart. It really starts to break down the circuitry that's been broken down in people before, and then people really become victims of it and they don't even know it. In
practical terms, should we redesign our houses and our offices to be shielded from this energy, or should we just find new ways of communication?
Well, there's two things. Yes, we need to take responsibility. As the hearts of people open, and they're not creating things from good ideas, but connected to the God consciousness, new things can be created that will allow humanity to be loved in the process. Even some of the larger spiritual groups, I've been around them. They use computers. They have telephones on their bodies. They have beepers, and I understand that because they're operating from the head, they do not understand what's happening to the energy field. Now that might be mother, because I'm mother, that I see these things, maybe because I'm from the heart, but people must take responsibility now to change these things, and that's why it's so important to open the heart, because the minute your heart's open, you know that it is hurting you. You know that it's hurting your babies. You know that even pornography pumped into the television, even if the television's unplugged, is impacting your consciousness if your heart's open. That's why it's important to open the hearts, if in fact humanity is going to survive.
Now that's the physical thing. Talking about the other thing, happiness. There are masters of the old, Sufis who say, yeah, but happiness and joy, that's not what it's all about. Those are emotions. What matters is the love of God, loving God and being in love, and whether that entails happiness is not important.
Well, so let me tell you this. First of all, one thing that I've learned my 18 months on earth is that the only thing that's constant is my love for God and God's love for me, my connection to God. That's the only thing that's kept me going through all the trials and tribulations. However, I know that people believe that happiness is not important, but happiness is a great barometer to have because it's available. When you heal a vessel all the way through, happiness is the barometer that you come to when your heart is balanced. When the heart and mind's balanced, happiness is the seat which you stand in. And then that's how deep your God connection is, in happiness. That doesn't mean you don't go through things. Love is important, but love connected with happiness.
But suppose you're sick, you feel deserted, something happens to you, you're hungry, whatever. Most people would say, then I'm not happy, but how can you still then experience the love of God and overcome this physical or body unhappiness?
Well, now let me just say this to you. There were times in Hawaii when I would sit in this lovely little restaurant in Maui waiting for my next assignment to come along. And I didn't know whether I was going to eat that night, and I didn't know where I was going to be that night. And I still had my connection with God, and my focus on that brought the next person in because my faith was there. So, happiness is something you choose. And that can be chosen when your heart is open and you're in connection with God. And I believe it's a message, a feminine message. I believe it's a time now, with all due respect to men, because I love men. I don't think the world could go around if there were men and women. But this is about an aspect that the women are going to bring to the world in accessing it.
You come, as you say, with an experience also from a long time ago. Maha Laksmi comes where? 5,000 years ago?
Over 5,000 years ago, yeah.
Those were the days of the Vedas.
Yes.
Of the Vedantic knowledge, of the beginning of what we now call Ayurvedic medicine. Was a different world. Let's take the Bhagavad Gita. Now, if I've ever seen a masculine war-type story, it's that. How do you relate it to your message now?
Well, I have to say to you quite frankly, I was, by direction to God and my agreements, I was thrown into a spiritual battle that was just like the Bhagavad Gita. And standing there in truth, speaking the truth in the face of darkness within a spiritual organization. So I lived it. And people around me that were with me experienced it also, to see that it's present now, that we're actually going through the eye of the needle. To live heaven on earth, one has to live the heart. You can't just have a conversation of it. You also must be able to be in partnership with other people that are also spiritual. It's about having your heart open, out of the mind. Theories and ideology and science are great. But if you can't live them, then there is something missing, and that is the heart being all the way open.
Yeah, but still in those days, and you yourself say, there is a battle sometimes. There is something to be done. There is, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Pandavi brothers and the whole thing and the fight. And Jesus, it was an adventure in those days, yeah? And yet we equate today happiness. We say, yeah, but peace is so important, and there should be no war. And even fighting for your beliefs is seen as, yeah, but that's war. Haven't we gone too far in going for peace as an alternative to standing for your principles?
Well, yes, there's a passivity. There's a passivity that I see that people in their minds, and a belief system that has been sort of how can I say, integrated into the consciousness, a belief of what loving is, and what has cost people their integrity, that they're living for the outside, not the inside. So true integrity, the integrity of self inside, so that God consciousness can be lived, is missing. And that is why I'm here in Holland. Because see, when you're a thinking society, you are not developed internally. That's the reason for developing the heart, for humanity to become strong and to truly live in what was lived over 5,000 years ago. You have to be integrated. And to be integrated, you must have your heart open. And to have that happen, yes, there will be battles. I've already experienced some. between the mind and the heart. But that is wonderful. They're the right kind of battles, instead of battles, they're the battles of opening the heart.
Politicians think that they are doing the same. I mean, I've never spoken to a politician who says, oh, no, but I'm bad, I do this. No, they all say, yes, it's about love and it's about caring for other people. And what we see is, we just had the Eurotop here, many big politicians from all over Europe. And what they're trying to do is regulate more, arrange more, making a web of things around us. What would you say to them? To not regulate, to regulate, to what is your advice to politicians to get from the mind to the heart?
Well, I really love that you're asking me this question, because regulation and the web of domination, like you're saying, is killing people, meaning it's cementing death and dying. It means that people aren't taking the kind of risk that they need to take to be able to strengthen themselves inside. They keep living more for the security of things. And yes, security is important, but if you live for that kind of security, you get further and further away from God. And what I say to the politicians is that because there's this need to create this web in the way that they're creating it, is because the heart has not been opened at the level that I'm discussing. And that there's a level of lying that's going on in the world that something has to happen. And I really believe that politicians need to do my work.
Uh-huh. When you say lying, one of the things I noticed is that we had the Berlin Wall 10, 15 years ago now. We have replaced it by what I call the data wall. We hide the poor and the people we don't want in Europe. We hide them behind permissions, passport, credit cards, plastic, electronics. So we don't see them anymore. There is no formal wall mere. There's no physical wall, but there is a great data wall. How should we change that?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to address this. Even though you don't see them, it's in the hearts and minds of everyone that this is happening, that there's a lack of responsibility in society. You see, when a society continues to perpetuate policies that support the degeneration of part of their people instead of really working with those people, there is a problem. And no matter how much you hide it, you see, it's a direct ratio with the suppression of emotion. The suppression of emotion, anger, rage, hurt, pain, has to go somewhere. When you suppress it, it is doing something. So somewhere it's impacting somebody else. And that is why the poor is existing. That's the reason why there's violence. And so there has to be, you can't push it away. You have to deal with it.
Yeah, but taking that to the extreme and going back to the Bhagavad Gita, where at a certain moment the war has to be and the guys have to go in and do the thing and even killing their family. Would you say go to, New York or Amsterdam, the red light district, go in there, experience, be abused, let your money be taken away? Because that's what people do now. They hide and they seek for security, some way pushing away the real experience.
Well, now this is something I'm happy that you're saying, because one of the things that someone like myself does for people is to offer them tasks that will help them relieve themselves of human suffering. Now, they may have to go through a lot of pain to break up karma, meaning break up human suffering, lifetimes after lifetimes of doing the same thing, facing themselves. Those districts that you talk about, all that's all part of human suffering that's not been dealt with. When you follow the heart, when you live your talk and allow your heart to unfold, your heart will take you the journey that's necessary for you to relieve yourself of the suffering. So when a person protects themselves from doing that, what they're doing is perpetuating their pain in the long run.
So in that way, government shouldn't be too protective.
That's right. Government, there needs to be a reorganization of government now, also business. What I understand from the messages that I have is that the ceiling of understanding that's on the planet now in government and in business, medicine, in education, that ceiling of understanding needs to undergo a change, because we've gone as far as we can go with it. You can't do more of the same and have the kind of change that's being predicted in society, in the world. There has to be a breakdown of things to allow changes to occur. Even, for instance, you mentioned credit cards, all that. That is all a function of because business has gotten to a place, the credit is needed for those that aren't facing whatever they need to face to open themselves up, and then they become victims of that whole system. So we have to have the ceilings of understanding in business and government, medicine, raise, and the only way that's going to happen is if there's heart openings. See, when the heart opens, the density of consciousness that's in the body is healed, meaning the patterns come up, and then the consciousness, the understanding can increase. And that's how the changes are going to occur on the planet.
How do you see virtualization of what do you experience? We talk about credit cards. That is a virtual thing. I mean, you have the credit card, it represents money, but there is no money. When we talk about a web and communications, even through the telephone, there is only virtual communication. You don't see the person, you don't feel them, you don't have their energy, but they're there. More and more we virtualize our experience. We say, oh yes, we have experienced the riots in Amsterdam and we have only seen them on the TV screen. Or we have read the newspaper. And yet, how do you see that we virtualize our experience?
Well, what I recommend, first of all, is for people to get more in the present, meaning instead of using credit cards, use cash. Be more present to your day-to-day life. However, I would like to say to you that if I'm talking to someone on the telephone, I feel them. Distance doesn't matter. So, if you're, I've even woken up in the middle of the night and felt something and then heard there was some battle going on somewhere. That's why I myself can't even be involved in listening to the news or anything, because I really feel so much. And it's not projection and it's not empathy. It is actually feeling it, because I have that capability of feeling at that level.
Differences between what was 5,000 years ago in India, different world, different pantheon of gods, different rules, and now what are the good differences, what are the bad differences?
Well, the bad differences is because over 5,000 years ago there were places that were not associated with business. Like when I talk about the Temple of the Heart, which one of my tasks is to support the process of developing the Temple of the Heart to be built here in Holland, and there'll be 13 in the world. And these temples will be free of government, political, and any kind of establishment, so that truly God consciousness can be realized for people. That's missing. Everything has become big business. Everything has some darkness on it. So when I say darkness, the structures that are created thus far, corporate, business, government, all of those structures have darkness in them because they're founded on the foundation of the way the family is set up. And the family is set up in darkness. And so...
you mean now versus the old times?
Yes. Well, that actually started over 5,000 years ago when they went out of the heart into the mind. We started towards this whole process of being in the darkness. And now's the opportunity to go from the darkness into the light. But that means that there has to be some people that are going to stand for establishing places where God consciousness can actually flourish. The messages can come free that have been in the darkness for so long, that are not shrouded in any way by any kind of creation thus far on the planet, meaning any kind of corporate, business, government structure that still houses darkness in it.
Yeah, but you can say that message has been brought to the world by Buddha and Jesus and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and the Bhagwan or whatever, and most of the time very soon they're temples of the heart, or by whatever name, their havens of peace turn into big business. And the church, that I'm sure Jesus Christ wanted to be, not an institution, but a network of love, turned into a massive bureaucracy, into a money-raising machine. The same goes for as far as I've seen, most religions, most movements.
Well, this is wonderful that you're saying this. For me personally, the only way that I can stay alive and be free here on earth is for me to live completely free of the system. So thus far I've lived purely from gifts. And when people gift me, they're actually opening up their heart And that's why the temples are going to be created, that it all be from gifting. It will not be business at all. And that's the only way I'm allowed to create them. And so it will not be big business. It's not going to be big business. And that is what has happened to the message of all those great spiritual teachers, that somehow once it gets hooked up into that circuitry, you can't reach them. And I've had the experience of attempting to reach those teachers. I have also been experienced in Hawaii being presented to a few American teachers, and the women teachers were not able to recognize me in any form or fashion because I was so feminine. They couldn't relate to it. Here also, Maha Laksmi is honored and worshipped by ceremonies, by spiritual groups, but I showed up and they couldn't compute that it could be me. And that's because they're part of big business, that they're in their heads, they theorize, and they're scientific. And that's what my job here on earth is, to create these temples that are not big business, that are only by gifting, and give people the opportunity to start to free themselves and to create a better world.
Something I have to clear up. You say Maha Laksmi, you are Maha Laksmi, but she was also, I suppose she was also a deity that was worshipped before?
Yes, well, yes, she's a deity that's been worshipped before, but you also know that people worship her all the time in ceremonies in the different spiritual organizations. And I presented myself to one of the spiritual groups and said, I'm here. And they wouldn't even talk to me. Mm-hmm. It was impossible for them in their belief system. So it's almost in the core wound that's not been healed in the love of the feminine, that there's not a possibility that I could show up. And so, yes.
But isn't there not beauty in not being recognized? What I always feel attracted to people like beggars in the streets. And I know some of them have chosen to be nothing, to sit there, love, be happy as they are, live of the gifts of the people, but not expecting anything. And I sometimes have the feeling that they are kind of training themselves to be fully themselves.
That's right. You can't. One of the biggest things is not to judge. I always say that judgment becomes your misfortune. So what appears to be, according to somebody's standards, somebody not succeeding at life or whatever, that's what they're learning at that time. To not be recognized, I had an agreement. One of my agreements was to go through this task that I went through. So, and the task was to also put a jolt into this organization. It was God wanted me to do this. So it wasn't like I needed to be recognized. It was more about opening their hearts. And so, and that's another thing. My agreement to be here is to use my power only for the good of people. And so I could so easily organize myself as a business and so easily create something very fast, but then I would become just like everyone else. So if it takes forever, if it doesn't happen, I'm still going to do it the way that I agreed to do it. It's not about recognition for me, it's about for freedom of people. Okay. And there's one more thing I'd like to say to you. That's one of the things that makes it really challenging for me, is that I am a deity. I need a lot of support, a lot of protection, because I am so sensitive. And that is one of the most challenging things for people to understand, because they see me in a body and they think I'm just like you. And with all due respect to you, I'm not.
Maha Laksmi, thank you.
Thank you very much.